Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on implementing K-12 lesson plans. So first of all, we'll start with please feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know what district or agency you are from. We love to have so many people from across the state of Oregon join us. And my name is Yesenia Ayala, and I'm part of the WestEd team, and I will be providing some framing for today's session. And just as a reminder, today's webinar is presented by the Oregon Department of Education and WestEd. A couple of housekeeping items. So during the session, participants will remain muted with their video off, but are invited to engage with us by sharing comments via the chat. So please feel free to also submit questions for our presenters using the Q&A feature. And just as a reminder, the session will be recorded and posted in ODE's K-12 Substance Use Prevention and Intervention webpage and to ODE's YouTube page. And lastly, my colleague has posted a link tree in the chat, and this link tree includes links to all of the resources that are going to be referenced during today's webinar. And we have 60 minutes together today, and our session objectives include a final reminder and review of the standards and requirements for opioid prevention lesson plans in Oregon Public Schools, and an overview of new opioid prevention lesson plans and additional materials and resources for educators. In terms of our agenda for today, we'll cover some welcome and introductions. We'll also do a review of standards and requirements for opioid prevention lessons in Oregon schools. We'll spend some time also revisiting Oregon's transformative social and emotional learning, also known as T-cell standards. And we'll do an overview of the new opioid prevention lesson plans. And we'll also have a section on teaching strategies for the new materials. And then we'll end with questions and answers from two of our guest speakers, Dr. Finn and Rebecca Bates. We do want to make sure that we share that this webinar will cover sensitive topics related to opioid misuse prevention, the trauma associated with the opioid epidemic, and the impact on students in the state of Oregon. But we do want to emphasize that the discussion aims to equip educators with effective planning strategies while also emphasizing the importance of inclusive and non-shaming language. And lastly, our goal is to create a respectful and supportive environment for learning and collaboration. So at some point, some content may evoke strong emotions or discomfort, but we want to make sure that participants take care for their well-being. So if you have any concerns or need any support, please let us know during or after the session. So at this point now, I'm actually going to pass it over to Alana Russell from the Oregon Department of Education for a welcome and introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Russell. I am the Substance Use Prevention Education Coordinator with the Oregon Department of Education. My role here at ODE is to provide technical assistance and support for school districts related to substance use prevention and intervention, as well as serve as a state-level point of contact and liaison for school districts. As part of this work, I have been fortunate to collaborate with WestEd to develop this learning series and a suite of other resources, some of which we're going to talk about today and share with you all. And they're all designed to help school districts across the state in their substance use prevention and intervention efforts. I also have the privilege of introducing my colleague, our guest speaker and panelist today, Dr. Zylisha Finn Akins. Dr. Finn is a member of the Standards and Instructional Support Team in the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment at ODE. She serves as the ODE Social Emotional Learning Education Specialist. With over 23 years of experience in education, she has supported various contexts and communities. Prior to joining ODE, she was a member of the Equity, Access, and Engagement Department in Hillsborough School District in Hillsborough, Oregon. During her tenure in Hillsborough School District, she served in numerous roles at the school level and district level, including student success coach, behavioral interventionist, the elementary universal supports TOSA, and the secondary universal supports TOSA. She has been a leader for transformative social emotional learning, climate and culture, and restorative practices. She is a former classroom teacher of 18 years in Atlanta Public Schools, Atlanta, Georgia, where she also champions social emotional learning, STEM initiatives, academic parent teaching teams, and mentored pre-service teachers. As a cultural ambassador and visiting educator, Dr. Finn served schools and communities in Nagano, Japan, and Ghana, West Africa, with deep attentiveness to cultural and community responsiveness. She is committed to cultivating relationships, practicing curiosity, exercising ongoing critical self-reflection, and implementing practices that elevate shared humanity and celebrate diverse ways of being. She enjoys exploring life's possibilities while traveling with her husband and 3 children. Here at ODE, we serve over 560,000 students across 197 school districts. Our mission is to foster equity and excellence for every learner through collaboration with educators, partners, and communities. I'm very grateful to be joining you all today for our fourth and final webinar. If today your learning leads you to additional questions, ideas, I encourage you to reach out to me. You will be provided my contact information. You are also invited to reach out to me if you would like to receive professional development units for this event. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my West Ed colleague, Derek Lowry.
Thank you. Thank you, Alana. So my name is Derek Lowry. I'm a Senior Justice Technical Assistant Specialist here at West Ed, and I'm going to introduce the core West Ed team here and then also our West Ed guest speakers for today. So also on this team is Dr. Loeffler Kobia, who is the Director of Justice and Public Health Policy and Practice, and Colleen Carter, a Research Associate. Now I'd like to introduce today's West Ed guest speakers joining us. So the first is Rebecca Bates. Rebecca is a Senior Technical Support Specialist at West Ed. She has over 25 years of experience in K-12 education as a teacher leader, technical assistance provider, and researcher. She started her career as a teacher in Oregon, and now her projects involve collaborating with multiple teams and partners at the local, state, and federal level. Rebecca has experience designing and leading professional development and translating research into practice. Rebecca attained her national board certification in early adolescence English language arts and is a certified project management professional as well. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Julie Webb. Dr. Webb is a senior program associate on the Assessment for Learning team here at West Ed. She is also a former classroom teacher and reading specialist with national board certification in early and middle childhood literacy. Julie's role at West Ed includes leading professional learning and providing technical assistance to districts and state departments of education. She holds a doctorate of education in educational and organizational leadership and an MA in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis on professional development. And our final West Ed speaker for today is Alex Newsom. Alex is a research associate here at West Ed with a PhD in special education from the University of Oregon, with experience as a certified special education teacher, team leader, and also an educational assistant. Alex has worked with students with a range of skills, abilities, and needs in Oregon and across the Pacific Northwest. And quickly about West Ed itself, West Ed is a nonprofit research development and service agency. We are dedicated to improving education, health, and human development outcomes for children, youth, and adults. We also have a focus on research and evaluation, professional development, and technical assistance. We support schools, districts, states, local governing bodies, and local and national organizations in implementing effective evidence-based strategies. And our key focus areas include education, health and well-being, and improved justice outcomes. Okay, so we just finished introductions, and at this point, we're going to have a little fact or myth activity. As part of this activity, I'm going to read a statement, and then we're going to poll you all, the audience, to select whether or not you think the statement is a fact or a myth, and we have two of these. So the first one, fact or myth: opioid overdose prevention education should not begin until late middle school because it is not appropriate to discuss substance use with young children. Do you all think this is a fact or is it a myth? Please take a few moments just to answer. Okay, I think we can share the results. So 100% of you who voted think that this is a myth. This is a myth, so you all are correct. Oregon law requires that students receive age-appropriate substance use prevention education beginning in kindergarten. The second one, fact or myth, the goal of opioid prevention lesson plans is only to teach students about the dangers of opioids. The goal of opioid prevention lesson plans is only to teach students about the dangers of opioids. What do you all think? Is this a fact or is this a myth? Let's share the results, please. So 100% of you all think that this is also a myth. Let's see. And 100% of you are correct. This is a myth. Understanding dangers is just a part of the new prevention lesson plans, as my colleagues at Wested will go over a bit later in this webinar. These lessons also aim to build decision-making skills, provide coping strategies, and also foster awareness among students. Thank you for participating in that little icebreaker. Let's pass it over and back to Alana.
Awesome. All right. So to start us off, I want to just give kind of a high-level overview, reminder of the recent legislation that led us to this moment, to these resources, and the requirements that currently exist in Oregon schools. So requirements around substance use prevention and intervention in Oregon are not new. As far as I know, schools have had some level of requirements in place since about the 1980s. But of course, more recently, there have been requirements put in place, especially in response to the opioid epidemic, which we've talked about in previous webinars. So as a reminder, Senate Bill 238 was passed in 2023, and that updated Division 22 to include requirements that schools teach students about the information around the dangers of opioid use, responding to an overdose, and the Good Samaritan law. These are the lessons that were published by ODE last year and were required to be implemented starting the 24-25 school year, so this most recent school year, and are required to be taught in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and once in high school. House Bill 5204 then appropriated additional funds to ODE to create curricular supplements, which is what we're going to be discussing today. So just to make sure everyone's really clear on it, the lessons we're discussing today are not required. They are supplemental and are tools that are optional for educators to integrate into their existing substance use prevention units. And these, just again, as a reminder, these are those required opioid lessons that have been available this school year, and they are available on the Oregon Department of Education Substance Use Prevention and Intervention webpage. So again, these ones are required. The ones we're discussing today are optional and supplemental. So like I alluded to, we did do kind of a deeper dive into the Division 22 requirements in our first webinar in this series. But as a high-level overview, Division 22 requires that as part of their annual assurances, school districts report that they have a written substance use prevention intervention plan, and those plans need to include K-12 instruction, including annual instruction in grades 9 through 12, policies and procedures related to substance use, including intervention and referral, and procedures for drug-related medical emergencies, communication with students, caregivers, and district staff, and staff training related to drug and alcohol use prevention. Today, we're really focusing on that K-12 instructional requirements, as these lessons are designed to help support school districts in providing that prevention education for K-12 students. So the lessons that you're going to see today are designed for grades K-5 and grades 9-12, and they do align with the 2023 health standards and are designed to be integrated, like I said, into existing units, right? They're supplemental, not comprehensive, but they are hopefully going to help build out those units that educators already have in their classrooms. We're going to take a closer look at them later in the session, but some high-level context for you now. We know that fear-based, shaming, abstinence-only strategies are not effective at preventing substance use amongst youth, and they contribute to the stigmatization of individuals who are impacted by substance use disorder. So instead of those tactics, these lessons are age-appropriate and they utilize evidence-informed strategies such as building skills to respond to peer pressure, make thoughtful decisions, and identify trusted sources of information. Additionally, the lessons all align with our Oregon Transformative Social Emotional Learning Standards. This is important for a lot of reasons. I'll name a couple. The first is that how we teach these lessons is just as important, if not more important, than what we teach, right? And a T-cell approach means that we're applying a strengths-based lens that honors the lived experiences and backgrounds of all the students in the classroom. Beyond this, T-cell helps us contextualize lessons in a safe and inclusive classroom, school, and district environment, systems level. And creating a sense of belonging for students in schools has been linked to a variety of positive long-term outcomes, one of which is substance use. And so this means that it's not only an essential part of our prevention education lessons, it is substance use prevention education. And so while I am a huge advocate of T-cell, I'm not the expert. That would be my colleague, Dr. Finn. And so I'm going to pass it on to her to share with you all of the wonderful ways that you can use this framework to support your substance use prevention education.
Oh, good. Yes, as we think about Oregon's transformative social and emotional learning, our T cell standards, I just want to take a moment to orient into our image where we really outline what this framework is. What does it mean for our shared humanity? What does it mean for our shared work? And even thinking about this as not a standalone program, not a dynamic that works in isolation of the other areas of work, but truly is integrated work, holistic work. So as we look at the guiding principles, that grounds our work, and I'll lift those guiding principles. If we could go back, as a part of that. Thank you so much. Then the adult transformative social emotional learning. How are we tending to the welfare and healthiness of adults? Using some of the same strategies and practices that we integrate with students. And then at the heart of it, our student transformative social emotional learning. And all of that is cultivated in and through conditions that we set intentionally so that teaching and learning, there's thriving that arises and emerges within our ecosystems of learning. So, as we unpack the social emotional learning transformative cell framework and standards, looking at those guiding principles, we're looking at the things that we're doing in our classrooms, in our schools. How are we being culturally responsive, community responsive, strengths based, trauma informed, and grounded in neuroscience? How are we setting conditions for learning, for thriving, cultivating authentic partnerships, adopting equitable policies and practices, creating thriving learning environments? And this is so that the adults as well as the students have the opportunity to thrive. That adult transformative social emotional learning, creating opportunities for adults to make connections and to sit in collaborative spaces, for adults to think about their own self care, their own self needs, to have opportunities for community care. We often talk about our collective wisdom and the strength that we can harness when we operate and function as a collective. And then again, adult well being and healthiness. And then that student transformative social emotional learning, an integrated approach. So there is always opportunity across contexts, across grade levels for integration of social emotional learning approach. We're also looking at our students' whole child opportunities, tending to whole child needs, humanizing our teaching, our learning, deepening our relational capacity. Social emotional learning extends beyond an isolated time of day. It should be integrated throughout experiences. We're developing, nurturing relationships, and then we're creating opportunities for belonging. And then just wanted to elevate our braid, our SEL competencies, and our SEL focal constructs, our transformative social emotional learning focal constructs, self-awareness, and how that supports the development of our identity, self-management. How does that self-management really help to harness our abilities to be agents of change and transformation? Social awareness. How does social awareness really impact needs for belonging and opportunities for belonging? Deepening our relationship skills. And as we deepen those relationship skills, the impact that it has on our ability in a collective to collaboratively problem solve, and then responsible decision making. And how does that really support our abilities to be curious? If we could go to our next slide. Yes. This is super exciting for me as I think about shifting toward transformative social emotional learning. For so long, we've heard social emotional learning, SEL, and now we have this transformative space, this dynamic that's been added into our framework. So, as we think about social emotional learning and the continuum, we're really thinking about being personally responsible, focusing on my skills, my risk prevention, my individual success, tending to personal well being, who I am in identity. And then we evolve. Who am I as a participant? Part of a community of individuals who are learning, who are thinking, who are reflecting. Both skills and individual success for well being, as that connects with interpersonal relationships and community building. And then how do we take all of those nuances and harness those into deepening our capabilities, our capacities for ensuring that we have democratic, fair, and inclusive communities? So that we're really focused on our interpersonal relationships and our communities as a collective. And then making sure that we all know that we have empowering agency so that we can have transformative impact on systems, on structures, on teaching and learning. At this time, I would like to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Webb, who's going to give an overview of lesson plans.
Hey, Dr. Finn. So we're really excited to share with you a high-level overview of the substance use prevention lesson plans that Alana had shared with you earlier. And those lesson plans are currently available on the Oregon Department of Education website. And if we go to slide 26, thank you so much. That's great. These lesson plans, as we mentioned, are supplemental lesson plans. They're not a full curriculum, but they are meant to support the substance use prevention education that's already taking place in your schools and meant to really fill out in a more robust way the existing lessons that you already have access to on the website. So new this year that are available now are elementary lesson plans. Now, these are not currently required by the state law, so definitely in addition, and they play a really nice role in elevating the health education standards for Oregon and to support the education of these grade bands for these students and the educators who serve them. So we have 2 lessons for each grade band here. In the kindergarten and first grade band, we have a lesson entitled Medicine Safety and another lesson entitled Medicine Rules to Follow. And these are all aligned to the standards. You'll see some themes emerging, especially ones in these elementary grades that I noticed in the standards was the careful attention to the developmental needs of these students. And you'll see that reflected in not only the titles here, but the lessons themselves. In second and third grade band of lessons, we have 2 different ones, making safe and healthy choices, about understanding medicine, and making healthy choices in feelings and tricky situations. And Alana mentioned some of the skills that we want students to have in these contexts. And also in the grades 4-5 grade band, we have safe and healthy use of medicine and other substances, as well as substance use advertising and awareness. We know our students are exposed to information about different substances beyond opioid and substance prevention. And so we want to educate them about some of the different things that they might encounter, both inside and outside of school. And for the secondary lessons, we have additional lessons for high school because we already have the middle school lessons that are already robust and fulfilling the requirement. We have additional lessons for high school to support those educators and staff. So for grades 9 and 10 in that grade band, we have 3 lessons: youth brain development, also messaging, media, and substance use, and navigating health and wellness through empowered choices. And then for the grade 11 and 12 grade band, we have substance use and misuse, also investigating substance use, and finally navigating hard conversations that matter. So you can see some of the topics and themes that are running throughout and build upon as students go and age up through the grades. And we're very excited to share that in addition to these lessons, that ODE, in partnership with WestEd, actually has created 2 professional learning sessions, one for elementary and one for secondary. And these sessions provide the opportunity to learn more about substance use and prevention in Oregon, and to help us consider the elements of a classroom environment that supports a sense of belonging, as well as dig into the standards and the lesson plans that have been created for schools. And these professional learning sessions are designed to be a full day, so 6 hours in length. They're in-person events for teachers and health educators as well as administrators. And they're designed to both provide the background knowledge that you all might need to address substance use prevention in our schools, and to provide the space to collaborate and discuss how you can support Oregon students. And these professional learning sessions will be provided by educational service districts across the state with the support of the Oregon Department of Education. So we're very excited. Those learning sessions will be launching this summer as well as next fall. And so you should keep an eye out for those opportunities in your region. They'll be coming along relatively soon. And we want to talk a little bit about the specifics that you'll see across in the lessons. So we have some teaching strategies in these materials that you'll notice are patterns across to support students and teachers. So some of the common strategies, these look a little bit different depending on the standards being addressed, as well as the developmental needs of various students. As we know, kindergartners and their experience in school can look very different than high school students. So you'll see how those change if you compare across those grades. But the lessons commonly contain some of these instructional strategies for students. We want to make sure we're activating prior knowledge so we understand what our students know and how we can build on that. Help them explore some new learning opportunities, as well as deepen knowledge that they may have, as well as engage with content and especially some of that new content. So marrying what they know and what they can learn next. We also make sure that there are opportunities for students to apply what they're learning in this lesson. And some ways that might even be writing to learn. Even in kindergarten, we have some developmentally appropriate ways for students to do that. And we also have a part for the teachers or other staff members who are supporting students with these lessons to review some of the key takeaways so that that learning can be really solidified for students. And those are some of the common strategies that I think a lot of educators will recognize that you're already doing in your classroom. You'll recognize that in the structure of the lessons as well. And finally here, as far as what you actually can download and use in your classroom, as we mentioned, the lessons are organized by grade band, and there's various numbers of them depending on the level. There's also a slide deck that will be associated with every single lesson, no matter the grade. So that's a resource for educators and staff members to use, as well as any handouts that will be required to successfully implement the lesson. So all of the pieces that an educator or staff member would need in order to implement the lesson with students is available for you and free to download. And I'm gonna actually pass it over to my colleague, Alex, who wants to talk a little bit about the different audiences and needs of some of the students that might benefit from these lessons.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, everyone. We know that these lessons are for all different grades, but they're also for all different types of students. We want to be mindful of that when we are designing and thinking about these lessons. So there are many ways to include different students with all different levels of need, ability, and talents. And here we are highlighting 4 strategies that might be useful to you, and these links will be in the link tree that will be in the chat. So the first is Universal Design of Learning, or UDL. This is a framework created by CAS to improve learning for all students. The guidelines were updated in 2024 to focus on learner agency that is purposeful, reflective, resourceful, authentic, strategic, and action-oriented. The UDL framework has 3 main components, focusing on multiple means of engagement, so the why, multiple means of representation, the what, and multiple means of action and expression, or the how. Teachers can utilize the guidelines to rethink access, support, and executive functioning needs of their students in their classroom and provide multiple types of engagement, representation, and action and expression in that process. The next is high leverage practices, or HLPs, are key evidence-based practices that provide effective education to all different types of learners. HLPs are especially important for students who receive special education services, but can be used with all different types of students. Examples include explicit instruction, providing scaffolded supports, adapting tasks to specific learning goals, and providing positive feedback. Next is incorporating augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. AAC are all the ways that a person communicates beyond verbal vocal speech. There are different types of AAC that include low tech, like writing, facial expressions, gestures, pointing, as well as the high-tech options like speech generation devices, iPads, Proloquo. Teachers can work with their speech pathologists or SLPs to find the right AAC system for the student and how to incorporate authentic student voice in the lesson. A reminder that verbal speech should not be considered the best option or the prioritized option in the classroom, and that all students should be heard and included in the way that works best for them. Lastly, we have the TIS Center out of the University of Minnesota providing the 5-15-45 tool. This center provides and assists schools, states, and districts in moving towards more inclusive environments for all learners, particularly those with high levels of support needs, thinking about our students in life skills classrooms. The TS Center has numerous resources, one of which I would like to highlight today. The 5-15-45 tool focuses on helping teachers create more inclusive instruction by adapting, adding, and reviewing existing lesson plans. Teachers can take 5 minutes to identify important content and instructional strategies of the lesson, 15 minutes to dig in deeper to the lesson to think about how to reduce barriers for students, and then 45 minutes to facilitate learning opportunities for all students and build their own skills in community. Resources are provided in this tool, and like I said, in the link tree that assists educators in this process. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Derek.
Thank you, Alex. So for this next section, we're going to actually have a Q&A with Rebecca Bates and Dr. Finn. So just once again to introduce them, Rebecca Bates is a senior technical support specialist here with us at WestEd who work directly on these lesson plans. And Dr. Finn is a transformative social and emotional learning education specialist with ODE. Thank you both for joining us today. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. Before we get started, I do want to remind the audience that during the course of this conversation I'm going to have with Rebecca and Dr. Finn, if you have any questions for them, we are going to do our best to set aside time to include Q&A questions at the end of this discussion. So please drop them into the chat or into the Q&A box. Let's get started with a question for you, Rebecca, if that's okay. Can you share with, thank you. Can you share with us how the lesson plans have been designed to align with the latest health standards?
Absolutely. So we started with the health standards and worked with ODE to identify 1 or 2 standards per lesson plan so that they're focused and what were kind of those high priority standards that we wanted to make sure that there was extra support in. So because the lessons are at grade bands, each lesson will, for example, if it's a K-1, it will represent both the kindergarten standard and the first grade standard. And those are front and center on the first page of the lesson plan.
Okay, great. So the standards themselves are included in the lesson plans for the educators.
They are.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. And I'd like to jump to Dr. Finn. And the question I have for you, Dr. Finn, is how does T-cell differ from traditional teaching approaches, particularly in addressing substance use prevention?
Transformative social emotional learning is truly an approach. And when we think about the approach, it centers our shared humanity. So if we were all to think about the work that we do, how does it center shared humanity? How does it center our shared experiences? And this work invites us to look at our shared work, our individual work. And as we think about our students and as we think even about preventative mechanisms that are in place, this is not about trying to fix kiddos or trying to fix. So it really invites us to lean away from deficitizing frames so that we're focused on with a strengths-based lens. Yes, we want to prevent. Yes, we want to circumnavigate. And what is it that we want to promote? We want to promote healthy conditions. We want to promote well-being. We want to promote shared collaboration. We want to promote student voice and student agency so that our students are part of our working mechanisms. And so in as much as we have these wonderful lesson plans and we have systems in place and structures in place, transformative social emotional learning also invites us to say, hey, our students, I often call them our babies, our students are part of this work, and we need their voice and we need their capacity to move this work forward. So their voices really become viable spaces of empowering and catalyzing the work. And so as we think again about transformative social emotional learning opposed to traditional forms of learning, it really does put storying first. so that we're hearing from each other, we're sitting in shared community. And a lot of the work is co-generated and highly collaborative as we sit in spaces to ensure that students and adults are thriving. Again, the transformative social emotional learning invites us to show up. There's a quote from a student. SEL, TCL is about how we show up for each other. It's about how do we human. So really thinking about what it means to be human as we have these conversations about creating spaces of well-being with our students. It is not scripted.
Hmm.
Even though we know that there may be some programs that schools, that districts are using, the transformative social emotional learning work extends beyond the program. So yes, we may have that isolated time where we engage in activities, but that time really should be used to frame the activities, to explore the possibilities for those activities, and to invite students to really reflect on how are these activities or games or this inclusive welcome, what does it mean for our enduring work? How does it sustain our work and our shared movement as we think about teaching and learning?
Thank you, Dr. Finn, for that answer. And maybe just for the audience, could you maybe highlight or share an example of what a strengths-based approach might be for students?
Well, as we think about being strengths-based, we really often think about, as an example, pulling from our cultural assets, their
Hmm.
linguistic assets, making sure we elevate their skills, their
Hmm.
talents, making sure that we have space for their stories, and
Hmm.
that we invite those stories into the context of teaching and learning. And then those stories are, again, possibilities for informing the work.
Thank you. Um, Rebecca, in what ways do the lesson plans incorporate the T-cell standards, the transformative social emotional learning standards?
Yeah, I'm excited to address this after you, Dr. Finn, because it
Yeah.
really is focusing on the how.
Mhm.
So the standards are the what. What is it that we're addressing? How are we talking about medicine? Making sure the kids are getting the information they need. But then there's that scaffold of the how, so that they are being prepared to make informed decisions by practicing conversations, by bringing their voice into the room. So we were really intentional about thinking about the kids who are being served, and that this is about them and their supports, and how do we create an environment where they can build the skills they need to have that preventative approach, and then also not feel judged if they're coming from a home where they're seeing things happen, not feel judged if they're in high school and they've made some choices they might not be happy about. So how do we create space for those conversations to happen, for kids to feel safe and to feel heard?
Hmm. Thank you, Rebecca. And I think a good follow-up question for you, Dr. Finn, is in what ways can educators use transformative social emotional learning to empower students to become advocates for their own healthy choices and just, general well-being in their communities?
Absolutely. And I just, again, Rebecca, thank you. We're not humiliating. And I think that also goes along with that strengths-based framing. I often think we're humaning, we're not humiliating. And what does that mean in the broader context? And as we think about how can adults integrate transformative social emotional learning within the context of this conversation, I'm going to
Hmm.
echo, not humiliating,
Hmm.
not judging. I was writing down some of the lesson plans. What does it mean to have healthy choices? How do we unpack that in a classroom with authentic conversation, inviting our students to share their stories and their real life experience? What does it mean for them? And inviting that as relevant and meaningful discourse. There's a lesson on feelings, right? Providing language so that our students can access and articulate those emotions and those feelings. Why do some feel a particular way about a particular thing and others have a different set of feelings? That allows and invites us to really bring in conversations around identity,
Hmm.
beyond what color do you like, right? That could be an entry point, but really unpacking and inviting our students to show up in real time. What does it mean to follow rules? I wrote that down as one of the lessons. So as I'm looking at the lessons, navigating difficult conversations, what does it mean to navigate? And so what I'm thinking is we think about transformative social emotional learning, that T cell invites us to create conditions in classrooms so that our students show up with trust for the adults, trust for each other. They have relational capacity. They can
Mm-hmm.
lean in. And one of the words that's coming to my mind is, and it's one of our competencies, our constructs. We think about being curious. There's so many questions. What does it mean to be curious? So how do we create within our classrooms opportunities, even language, invitation, where all questions are on the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that that could become a little complex. At the same time, inviting those curiosities and as much as possible, making sure that educators are fortified with the tools and resources to be able to engage. I also think about our three signature practices. Having an inclusive welcome is critical, inviting students into space so that they know that they are welcome with all of their curiosities. They're welcome to the learning experience. And an inclusive welcome does not have to take 10, 15 minutes, right? It could be a mantra, it could be a song, it could be a poem, it could be something that is co-generated, co-constructed with students. And then engaging strategies, that's practice and pedagogy. So how are we
Mm-hmm.
inviting students to really engage with the content? Whether they're doing reflective exercise, whether they're doing turn and talk, whatever those structures are, but that engaging activity invites that student voice and that critical thinking. And then that intentional close. I saw a lesson or I saw something about one of the strategies I wrote down was reviewing, right? Where we come back and we review and we give sense making time for the learning experiences that have just taken place. And so those are some strategies that we can invite. And then simply leaning into the curiosity again of students as we engage them in not only the approach of creating that, co-generating that healthy
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem, but also leaning into what parts of the subject matter are really engaging and meaningful for them in their lived experience in school and out of school.
Mm. Can you follow up a bit more? I think you touched on it in this answer, but could you also kind of talk about how this approach, creating these conditions, being inclusive and welcoming, incorporating different voices, how this helps to develop empathy and compassion in students when discussing a very sensitive topic like substance use?
One of the things I often, and it's in our framework, heavy,
Mm-hmm.
humanizing. And I've said it before. How do we humanize the work that we do? Is it humanized simply because we show up in the form in which we're in? And how can we further that so that there's some shared space? We often talk about belonging. How do we create pathways so that our students have connecting fiber, for connecting opportunities, so that they can help create belonging with each other and for each other, so that there's some strong understanding about what are the conditions that we create together in this classroom and why
Mm-hmm.
are these conditions necessary for all of us, these shared agreements, if we will. What does it mean for us to share and be in agreement when we come from different spaces and different places and different identities? So to really be very transparent in our conversations, to invite our students to co-create again those conversations, to ensure that our students understand as we think about the transformative social emotional learning that it is really about that critical listening, that critical dialogue, and then going back into envisioning what it means to be a part of a healthy society, social and emotional learning. What is it that our students are envisioning for themselves, for their community, for their society? What does it mean to be well together and healthy together? And again, having those very transparent conversations through systems, through structures, and then employing those strategies that have been forementioned, the prior knowledge, activating
Mm-hmm.
what we already know, activating schema. Again, that's inviting those stories, exploring. I wrote these down, engaging, applying, having the opportunity after the lesson, throughout the lesson, to apply for students to be able to talk about the real life relevance and meaning and how it can be applied to their real time experience.
Thank you, Dr. Finn, for both of those answers. Let me jump back to Rebecca very quickly. And Rebecca, can you share with us how teachers can create a safe space for students to freely engage in these discussions? I think that would be a good follow-up to what Dr. Finn just highlighted.
Yeah, and so much of this is about the conditions.
Mhm.
Actually, at the beginning of most of the lesson plans, we say, this is a really sensitive topic. You need to have these conditions in place before you jump into this lesson plan. You can't the lesson plan isn't going to create the conditions. It's the acknowledgement of the students in your room as individuals. It's the accepting and bringing in their voice, providing space for them. So this hopefully isn't the first time they're doing turn and talks and telling their stories and being seen and heard in the classroom, so that they already have a voice and a sense of safety, so that there are some expectations around, how we listen, how we hear each other, so that there is that sense of safety between the students and the teacher and among the students. So creating, if they're early in elementary, maybe they need some sentence stems so that they can learn how to communicate with each other and how to ask questions to each other, and then reinforcing those as they go on so that they can continue to do that. Have agreements for your classroom so that there are clear expectations that everybody agrees with and buys into, because they have to buy into it and agree with it, especially as our kids get older and they need to see themselves represented in what they're going to follow, so that they can have that sense of belonging and feel like they're part of the classroom. And then just, again, recognizing them, recognizing for who they are, what they bring, and that every kid has assets that they bring to the classroom and has a story and is a unique individual, and just celebrating those things. So I think that can help create the conditions needed to be able to enter into some of these really sensitive subjects.
Thank you. These have been great answers. And I think at this point, Rebecca, I want to ask you maybe a question that shifts a little bit to what the teachers may face as challenges in implementing these lesson plans. Can you speak to what challenges they may face, and if they do face them, maybe some strategies that they can use to overcome them?
Yeah, I think providing a sense of safety for kids is sometimes a challenge, because of the uniqueness of students. And so I think going and leaning into some of the protocols that already exist for discussions, protocols that are available for teachers to build these systems so that it's a daily encounter, so that kids don't come and think, oh, I have to talk today. I'm not used to talking to each other. I'm used to kind of hiding within myself. Standing at the door and saying, good morning. You know, do you want a fist bump? Do you want a high five? What do you want? Getting into the hallways, knowing where your students come from and who they are. So if you have students with different languages, celebrate those languages, even if you don't know them. They can probably translate for you. So ask for some of those pieces. And those are opportunities even within these lesson plans to do some of those pieces. Is how can you celebrate the students within your room and make them see themselves within these, so that the language is representative of who they are. Because kids need to see themselves in their learning. I think I answered it, Derek, but follow up if I.
No, you did. I really liked how you ended it, that they need to see themselves in their learning. I think that that's a very good point to highlight. And I think a really good follow-up question for you, Dr. Finn, is how can educators address potential resistance from students or even parents regarding substance use education through a transformative social emotional lens?
As I think about, which I think is an awesome question, resistance is part of one's identity, right? So so that resistance does not become a descriptor, right? It doesn't become a definer of the colleague, the parent, the student. That resistance should be a place of curiosity, right? Does this resistance come from, is it cultural? Is it a part of a community way of being? Is there fear there? Is it a part of, is there a faith tradition that's involved, right? Resistance is information. And so what do we do with that information? That information should inform the way we show up with compassion, with grace, the way that we show up being curious, and creating opportunities for even those stories of resistance to be a part of the learning dynamic. As well, our parents are partners in this work, right? So there has to be a level of appreciation, of respect for any information that parents share with us. And how do we use that as a partnering agent, making sure that we maintain transparency, make sure that we maintain forward focus, make sure that we're leaning into collective wisdom. And collective wisdom, which is a big tenet of our framework, basically doesn't necessarily say that we're always going to always agree and be on the exact same page. However, we have space and we have time and we have resonance in order to sit in community to hear those different perspectives, to honor those different ways of being, and then to lean in with preparedness for forward moving. How can we still plan? What are some possible entry points? Even as we sit in spaces with individuals who may be resistant to this work, are we
Hmm.
resistant to well-being? Are we resistant to healthiness? Are we resistant to being able to show up in protected and safe spaces? And so it could be that we have to frame our conversations in ways that we can glean some collective understanding. And within there, maybe we can make some incremental movements for some shared work and shared progress, because all of us really are about creating healthy opportunities so that our students can be fulfilled, so that they can thrive, and so that they really can pursue aspirations, as well as our adults. And so it really is around the framing of the conversation and not stopping at qualifying someone as resistant, but seeing that resistance as a point of entry
Hmm.
and as a part of someone's identity, and honoring that and not being afraid and backing up from that. That does not make someone counter to the work. It simply creates an opportunity for us to consider, how do we move forward and where do we connect in some shared space.
Thank you for that answer. And I think another question to follow up on that answer is, do you know of any or what are some best practices for basically engaging families and community members in T-cell initiatives related to substance use?
I I don't want to say that I can give you a list of best practices. Like I don't have a data set or an article that I can share in that way. What I do want to elevate is our
Hmm.
framework.
Okay.
Am I trying? And so as we think about our framework says that our parents are experts on our children, our students. And part of the work is, as we think about creating those conditions, is about partnerships. And so as we think about engaging parents, I would invite district leaders, I would invite school leaders to sit again with a strengths-based lens on
Hmm.
what does that look like as a system and a structure, so that we can have some conversation. What does it look like in terms of transparent outreach, transparent communication, so that there is uh, nothing that's left to imagination. Our parents are involved, they're in the know around the lessons, around the approach. Transformative social emotional learning invites everyone as a part of this larger community to be a part of this work, again, for the well being of students, the well being of adults, and the well being of our collective community. So, as I think about that, some powerful opportunities for parent engagement.
Hmm.
Many times schools may have parent communities, departments that connect directly with parents to support parents' needs, parents' interests, family engagement. Those are some powerful structures that should be considered as we start to think about how do we build and fortify relationships with parents, even employing some of the same strategies with our parents, with that inclusive welcome, with those engaging strategies, so that
Hmm.
families begin to build relationships.
Thank you, Dr. Finn. I think we only have a few minutes left, and I'd like to, Rebecca, before we transition to Yessi, I'd like to ask you one or two questions, basically relating back to the lesson plans for our audience. The first question is, in what ways do the lesson plans emphasize preventative measures against substance misuse for those at a young age?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the standards, they don't really address substance use disorder until fourth and fifth grade. It starts with medicine and trusted adults. So having kids have people that they can talk to, people that they can go to take medicine, to understand what medicine is, how to read a medicine label, so that they learn who they can trust with medicine
Hmm.
and start to provide that language that's not shame-based or fear, but give them the skills and tools they need to be able to use medicine, but always with a trusted adult. So it starts with kind of that relationship aspect, and then how do you make safe choices? So, um, you know, kids start peer pressure pretty little, and so how do you stand up for what you want to believe? Start giving them again, the voice, the skills, so that they can participate in conversations, so that they can know what to do if they feel, you know, like they might not have a choice. So
Hmm.
that gives them the skills so that they can make choices. And so that's what the early elementary is focused on.
Thank you, Rebecca. And on the flip side of that, for the older students, can you speak to the lesson plans, how they address the influence of peer pressure on substance use decision making for some of the older students?
Yeah, with the older students, we're really giving them the information. You know, they're old enough that they can understand, not so much with the peer pressure, but even personally, that if I make these choices now, this is what it does to my brain. And so, do I want to make a choice that might impact the development of how my brain develops over time? And so, giving them the information to make informed choices with what they're going to do, but then also help them to recognize the world around them and how it influences them. So, how does media influence us? How has media influenced us over time? What kind of messaging are we surrounded with? And so, making them more cognizant of what's going on around them so that they can have the information to make decisions. And then also looking at stress. So,
Hmm.
stress is a huge factor. And so, what strategies can I have to, if I'm stressed out, what can I do? And then, even going so far as when they're going into the 11th and 12th lesson plans, is how do you have those challenging conversations?
Hmm.
So, if this is what my peers are doing, how can I engage in those? Give them some practice opportunities so that, I know when we do role plays, sometimes the kids get silly, but that's part of that uncomfortableness because these are hard conversations. But if we give them practice, then they have the words, they have the memories, they have some of these opportunities so that when it becomes real, they can make informed choices and then they have the skills to make the decisions that they want to make.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think we have like maybe a minute left before we do a closeout. Dr. Finn, is there anything else that you would like to add about transformative social emotional learning, empowering students and communities that maybe we didn't get to in the questions?
No, I said no, and then I proceeded to answer. We're talking about in very localized places. We really talked about the classroom, but I don't want to dismiss the power of having a school climate and culture.
Yes.
The conditions are set school-wide to really support these conversations in classroom, outside of classroom, right? This is ongoing preventative work, ongoing pursuit of healthiness and wholeness, and providing our students with opportunities to really pursue, again, making decisions that are healthy, making decisions that contribute to their individual well-being, and supporting them as they support each other. So really, this is a part of, yes, that classroom dynamic. However, that classroom dynamic can really be elevated when there's an overall school climate, culture, ecosystem where there is language, where there is a visible connection with making sure that we fortify the experiences that our students are having and making sure that those experiences are healthy, those experiences are felt experiences, and not simply relegated to one particular time of day or one particular place, but felt throughout the walls and the halls of every school.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you both for participating in this Q&A and answering all of my questions for the audience. Thank you. And I know we only have a minute left, so I'd like to shift back over to Yessie to close us out.
Thank you so much, Derek, and to our amazing guests today for engaging us in that super powerful Q&A. So just as a reminder and just as a wrap up, this was part of a virtual learning opportunity session. So this is just a summary of the 4 sessions, with this one being the Implementing K-12 lesson plans, which wraps up our series. And then lastly, Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, recordings will be available in the coming weeks, so please look out for an email regarding that. And then we'd love for you to complete our follow-up survey. So my colleague posted the link to the survey in the chat, and if you can take a couple of moments, we really value feedback and would love to hear from you. Other than that, thank you again for joining today, and I hope that you have a great rest of your evening.